Look, we all make mistakes, but if you feel like you've screwed up your marriage, watch this. My name is Santiago. I'm the CEO and founder of Empowered Man. I'm here to talk to you about today the idea that if you've screwed up your marriage, you need to know what to do. Look, a lot of guys come to us over the last several years and they feel like either they've screwed up their marriage, their wife has screwed up their marriage, and they don't know what to do. So maybe you think, hey, you had a conversation with your wife, it turned into a big blow up, and she says, you know what, I hate you, I want out of this marriage, and she leaves. And you're blaming yourself. Or you find out your wife is cheating on you and you start to blame yourself. You start to look and go, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? How did I cause this? Why would she go seek this out somewhere else? Or maybe you're the guy who cheated. Or maybe you're the guy who was a jerk, who wasn't a very nice husband and ended up pushing her away to the point where she said, you know what, I want out of the marriage. So today I want to talk to you about 3 different things that you need to understand as you go down this journey. So number 1, if your wife wants out of the marriage, has cheated, has leaned out, or you've even cheated, or you've leaned out, and you've said you don't want this marriage, but now you want the marriage, you've hurt her, whatever it is you've done, it's time to move forward. That's right, it's time to move forward because you have to understand this number 1 concept, that when all of this has happened, when there's been any type of affair, when there's any type of someone leaning out of the marriage and saying, I don't want to be married to you anymore, or moving out, or sleeping on the couch, all those things, the old marriage is dead. And the only way to move forward is to create a new marriage. That's right. Now, sleeping on the couch because you guys had a fight, that's one thing. But if this is a constant thing where you're constantly on the couch, or where you're constantly living on the couch for like months at a time, or maybe you're living in a second bedroom, like where there's actual separation, that's when you know the old marriage has to die. Because the only way to move forward is to start to create a new marriage. Now, I've got plenty of episodes on creating a new marriage, but in a sense, what we're talking about is the idea that putting away the old habits, the old patterns that got you to where you are. That's the very first thing that you must do. The second thing is you've got to own your shiz. That's right, own your shiz. I could say another word, but YouTube won't let me. That looks like taking account for what you've done wrong. Now, it's easy when you're going through this, and you've probably heard me say this on other videos. If you haven't watched my other videos, go watch them. Matter of fact, if you like what you're hearing so far, hit the subscribe button, hit that bell, pop that in. You got to own your stuff, taking account for things you've done wrong. What I really like to do is look at, where did I contribute to the failure of the marriage? What did I do that I can own? Because you can't change your wife. You can't change the things that she's done. You can't change how she feels. And most men in this situation, honestly, that's what they want to do. They want to try to change how they feel. I remember going through this and my wife coming to me and saying, I want out of the marriage. And I was like, but what about our covenant? You signed a contract with me. You made a covenant in front of God and people and everyone that said, I will love you till death do us part. And I'm not dying. What's going on here? And those are the feelings that you have in this moment, right? But look, your wife is not a possession. She isn't the thing that you get to keep and get to hold on to. Yes, flesh on flesh. Yes, body to body. Yes, you're a part of each other. But when one part is wanting to separate from the other part can't cling and make her come back. So you've got to own your stuff. And I'm telling you right now that if you begin to do that, if you begin to own your stuff and not blame her, not go, well, you did this, now I'm going to own my stuff, and I'm going to own my stuff as long as you own your stuff, that everything's going to be good. No, that's tit for tat. We're not talking about tit for tat. We're not talking about transactional relationship. We're talking about you just owning your stuff. Now look, if your wife is not a safe place, don't share it with her. Keep it internal. But here's what I want you to do. Number 1 is I want you to forgive yourself. If you feel like you've done things that have hurt her, if you feel like you've done things that have pushed her away, if you've cheated, if you've done whatever, you have to start with forgiving yourself. Because if you can't forgive yourself, you're going to continually and consistently push that onto her and push it onto other people, because unforgiveness walks in shame, and where there's shame, there is blame. And that's ultimately what men do, and it disrupts from the power of progress in your potential new relationship. Shut down your ego and be humble. That's right. Humble, be humble, eat humble pie, whatever you want to call it, because your ego right now is going nuts. Right? It's thinking all these thoughts. It's thinking all these things like, what do I do? How do I do this? You're nervous. You're anxious. You're fearing the end of what you've known. Well, look, the end is already here. But now what you got to do is not figure out how to save, but how to create something new or move on. It's literally that simple. You literally have 2 options right now, which is try to cling, try to make it happen, try to do all these things, or move on. And I'm not saying you have to even move on from the marriage, but move on from the old so that you can get to the new. You know, it's kind of like this principle that every time, in the past, like when I want new clothes or whatever, I'll get rid of a bunch of old clothes to make room for the new clothes. You have to get rid of the old to make room for the new. That is the principle here. And the only way that happens is if you shut down your ego. You have to shut down your ego is going nuts right now. It is trying to fathom how this person could separate and how this person could want to do this and all these things. But humility will be your power. Humility will be that thing that brings you to the next place. I always look at it this way, is that you have two powerful tools that you can bring, that if you develop these tools, meaning like if you really concentrate and learn from skilled people like Empowered Man how to develop these things, you will have two tools that will blow everyone and everything out of the way. And we see this all the time in Thrive, where guys will come in 3-4 weeks and they start becoming new people. And people at their job, people, their family, they'll go, wow, what is happening to you? And it's because they've learned how to develop these two tools. Tool number one is humility. That is where they understand that their humility of that they don't have everything together, they're not perfect husbands, that they weren't perfect husbands, that they didn't do everything correctly or whatever. But they also know that their wife had to make choices, and those choices are not their own. And so they don't own the wife's choices, they own their choices. That humility, though, recognizes, hey, I'm not perfect in this, and I want to learn from my mistakes. I want to learn from those things. So as guys come into our Thrive program, they begin to learn the mistakes. They begin to learn how they contributed to the failure of their marriage. And the second tool is joy. Joy is strength. Humility is power. Joy is strength. And so when you bring those two together, you've got both strength and power. That's life-changing. That is the change that I want for you, is that where you shut down your ego and you begin to be humble about life and what you've experienced with your wife. And then you all of a sudden bring joy to the surface, and that joy becomes your strength. So humility, joy, and your wife goes, wow, I've left you. I've wanted nothing to do with you, but every time I interact with you, you're humble. You're not trying to she-button me. You're not trying to blame me. You're not trying to do anything. You're not trying to manipulate me. You're not trying to convince me. And at the same time, there's this joy about you that is intoxicating, and it's actually addicting. People want to be around other people that are joyful. They don't want to be around sad suckers. Your wife doesn't want to be around you when you're sad. She doesn't want to be around you when you're depressed all the time. She definitely doesn't want you to blame her for your depression, because she's not at fault for your depression. Your depression, your sadness comes from your lack of dealing with your emotions and feelings. Now, I'm not saying you're not going to be sad for a period of time. There's nothing wrong with that. I was sad for months, especially the first time I went through this, where I literally cried for 4 to 6 hours a day, maybe even longer. I would leave my office in the middle of the workday and go downstairs and find a quiet place to cry because I couldn't live. I felt like I was dying. So I understand, and I'm not saying you can't have those times and those seasons of sadness, but when you're around your wife, that's where you've got to allow yourself to bring joy, and not just around your wife, but around other people. What you want to do is find new things that you can get engaged in and do that will lead to joy, that will lead to that which comes out of humility. So it's humility and joy. And now you don't have to face all this other stuff without having any kind of power. So if you feel like you screwed up in your marriage, this is exactly what you need to do to move forward.